The Ad Podcast. We are broadcasting live early on the West Coast today. We've got an exciting guest for you guys to kick off the day. Crystal Foote is the founder and CEO of Digital Culture Group, an award-winning Atlanta-based ag tech company she launched in 2023. As the industry's only Black and women-owned firm in the ad tech space, DCG bridges data and humanity through innovative audience targeting. Her Audience Resonance Index or known as ARI, is a real-time cultural insights and inclusive advertising methodology, helping brands connect authentically with multicultural audiences beyond basic demographics. A trailblazing advertising executive and entrepreneur, she started her career in New York at agencies like MEC, RGA, and Publicis, and then moved into tech at Exponential and Amobee before founding DCG with just $300. She's grown it rapidly, adding Fortune 500 clients like Jeep and McDonald's, 47% year-over-year growth, earned spots on Inc.'s 2025 Female Founders 500 list, Ad Age's Leading Women of 2025, and is a USBC Power 50 honoree. Crystal is also a published children's book author, The Inclusivity Superheroes, A Tale of Diversity and Unity, a DEI champion, philanthropist, bakes giving back to her businesses, and frequent podcast and conference speaker on topics like AI and targeting, cultural relevance, and growth audience strategies. Crystal, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dylan, for having me. That was a mouthful. That's a lot for early in the morning.
Hey, well, luckily it's not my first rodeo. I've learned, I've done a lot of international travel this year. So, waking up at weird times of the night and just figuring out how to get up and get it going is, standard par for the course at this point. But I know I kind of rolled through a bit of a nice bio there, but would love for you to give maybe some context to it. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where'd you study, and what got you into the advertising industry?
Oh, we're going way back. So I grew up in the Bay Area.
Okay.
In a town called Vallejo. It's actually the town before you get to Napa and experience all the amazing wine culture that Napa has to offer. Grew up there. I had grapes in my backyard, and I was like, grapes, let's turn these into raisins. I didn't appreciate it until I left. And I went to New York for school. I went to St. John's University, go Storm, on the cheerleading team for 4 years. And then that's what I really appreciated growing up next to Napa. I was like, I sure miss those grapes in my backyard. But it was a different experience for me. It was hardcore. It was really hitting the ground running, right, in a really big city. And I was by myself. I had no family or friends there. And I decided to study advertising because at that time, New York City, that was a mecca of advertising. That is Madison Avenue. Yeah, exactly. So I said, what better place to learn advertising than to be right dead smack in the middle of it. So, started my career there, agency side, and really learned a lot about agency and politics within agency culture, and then also rep life, going to different types of events and learning different types of pitches about tech at that time. Digital and social media were very new. We were just looking at click-through rate and, putting together a small social media team when that became popular, but it wasn't like it is today. And so to see the evolution of digital advertising is incredible. But then I moved to Atlanta. And when I moved to Atlanta, the culture was very different from New York. It was more laid back. A lot of the peers that I had that worked at the agency that I worked at that time, they had families in their early 20s. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, yeah. And New York, that's not the culture there.
No, not at all.
And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Because when I'm done with work, I usually go to happy hours and they were going home to their family. So I said, let me transition and also learn more about the tech side of the business, like really learn more, becoming a sales rep. And so I went to what they used to call the dark side. I don't think they say that anymore, but I went to the dark side and I became a specialist in mobile advertising. And that was like a big thing. It was like the year of the mobile. Oh my goodness. Are people going to click on ads and look at ads on their mobile devices? So that's really funny now as we think about it, because it's just part of the digital ecosystem now, mobile advertising. But I started off there and then I continued my career in the ad tech space. And that's what led me to really develop something that I felt the industry needed to move forward. And that was Digital Culture Group and developing AI to help understand that cultural relevance and resonance with an audience. And especially now, because media is so fragmented, we have so many different screens we can use. I said, we really need to make sure that we have that connection with the audience, or else we're not going to drive engagement. We're not going to drive brand loyalty.
I love that. That's a great backstory, and thank you for walking through me some of it. It's interesting, multicultural agencies, when I've worked with them throughout the years, a lot of times it's like, okay, I've got an agency for Hispanic, and I've got agency for African-American segment, and I've got my agency for, Asian, Southeast Indian, and, I've got these like boxes to tick. And then if you think of a state like California, like multicultural audience is the majority of the state, and that's becoming a larger fact across the country. And really, when you think about global audiences, have you seen a shift in kind of this idea of having to like segment and talk to an audience specifically, or more about the idea that multicultural audience is the majority audience and campaigns should start with a multicultural audience in mind before they ever launch into a campaign, instead of thinking about these like splinter groups?
I love that question. So the first time in history, multicultural and what we know as diverse audiences are now the majority, to your point, Dylan. The first time in history, with interracial couples, biracial children, the increase in Hispanic population as well. And so we need to look at, when we're looking at a product or a service from a brand, how does that really resonate with the audience that you're trying to reach? And also making sure that we factor in those nuances for those audiences too. So with Audience Resonance Index, RE platform, we actually have an API with the US Census data and American Consumer Survey data to show us, based on the audience segment groups, which population is increasing or decreasing for those audience segments. So that way we're not guessing that we should spend 5% on only multicultural audiences and then 95% on general market. We need to make sure that we are planning this strategically, because we've also have done case studies with campaigns showing that when we did a general market campaign, we're really not reaching everybody. We're not using talent or language preferences to reach individuals. And so when we did a quick test to see what if, based on, it was a hospitality brand in California, and it was in LA, and we said, what if we had a segment reaching the AAPI audience, and we had in language, in addition to making sure the talent that was being shown in the ad represented the audience we're trying to reach, the API audience? How would that change the performance? And we saw over almost triple the foot traffic to the hospitality brand than the actual general market campaign.
Wow, that's crazy. So like a 3x increase in the KPI.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. When I almost expect ads to at least know something about who I am these days. When I see a piece of creative that is targeted to like a surfer in Southern California, and it's like a guy with a surfboard and he's getting into his new Jeep and throwing the surfboard up there, it's like, oh, okay, that resonates with me. Or if it's like a hotel brand, like you mentioned, and it's showing me like the cool things that I can do with my wife at night, but the cool things that I can do with the kids and the family during the day, that resonates. Do you think we're at a point where audiences almost expect the technology behind the scenes? They may not know what's happening, but they know that ads kind of land more often as far as like representation and dialing into affinity. Are we at a point where audiences expect that versus being surprised when it happens?
I think so, because audiences know that we have so much data on them. That is a huge, I feel like, controversy in just our society, that we collect way too much data. However, the way we're using the data is not intelligent. We're not splicing that data to serve a relevant ad. Instead, and this is a true story, I was served a dog ad for pet food, and my dogs passed away tragically a year prior. And I have 2 small children. So in the morning, we are served this ad, and we keep on seeing this ad every, I would say, 30 minutes. And my kids are sad. My son can't shake it because he's 4 years old. And he's like, Mommy, can I get a new dog? Like, I really miss Chloe because of this ad. And I was like, why are you serving me this ad
It's
when
like
you know I have
traumatizing.
it's super traumatizing. We have
Yeah.
not made a purchase of dog food. We have not been to the vet. You have all my data. So it's so easy to make sure that you're reaching households with actual dogs in there instead of just doing a reach play. You know, they're doing a reach play to just make sure they just spray and just like, hopefully this household has a dog, but make it more relevant play than a reach play. Because when you're doing a reach play, again, now I have a bad taste in my mouth, and I would never, if I decide to ever get another dog, ever use that pet care brand to, you know, send us food for the dog, because I don't like how it created this toxic environment within our household.
I love that example. I think advertisers need to hear more about not just the the use cases that might feel annoying, but like the fact that sometimes there are insensitivities based on life stage or life events, or even mood or world events, where like your ad can not only have an annoying impact, it can actually have like a negative impact where the consumer may never consider your brand again because you're like doing something that's actually hurtful. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
It's trauma. Yeah. It's a lot of trauma there.
Yeah, that's wild. I was thinking of one that's just annoying, like this podcast platform that we're using right now to broadcast this show. I won't say it who it is because I actually really love the software, but I see 10 ads every single night for this platform on YouTube, and I've been a customer for God knows how long. I upgrade, I spend more money all the time to get more credits to do AI clips or more storage, and they're still hitting me with ads. It's wasted ad spend at minimum, and it's definitely annoying. But
it is, yeah. And they should be suppressing you as a client already, right? So instead of reaching new audiences, they're wasting their money reaching you again. And again, it's just not smart, or even this, I would say, intelligent use of their ad dollars, or even technology that they have. Like, you're getting that on YouTube. There's a lot of technology that can be involved, even first party data that can be uploaded to make sure you're suppressed as an audience. But I feel like marketers sometimes, and the agencies that they use, are not thinking in that way. And that's why our platform was developed, to make sure that we are looking at the white space opportunities to make sure we can build a stronger ecosystem when it comes to end-to-end marketing solutions in our industry.
I love it. So tell me a little bit about the business model. Are you guys effectively a DSP? Are you a data company? How should the industry be thinking about you? Is it, multivariant, or do you sit squarely within a particular part of the industry?
Yeah, so Digital Culture Group, we're an ad tech company. And when you think about us as audience first, performance engineered. So we have our own proprietary AI tech that we created in-house, homegrown, and we help with every facet of marketing, from audience insights to creative, all the way to activation optimization.
That's awesome. So do you almost kind of act as a full service agency in a little bit of a way too? Like, you actually will develop campaigns and you'll do the research component to figure out what are the insights that drive the ideas around a campaign. You may actually create the spots or the ad units themselves and the creative, and you can run the media essentially.
Yeah, I would say more so ad tech. We are DSP agnostic. We have APIs into SSPs, but definitely not an agency.
Okay.
Big kudos to agency partners that we have, because they have a full, I would say, multi-agency, global agencies that they work with on campaigns. And we would like to, not be responsible for that type of situation.
I love it. I love it. All right. So you launched Digital Culture Group in 2023 as one of the only Black-owned and women-owned ad tech companies in the space. I had the benefit of working for a female-owned agency for 9 years in my prior role. I've seen the juxtaposition of working for a woman and working for men. I much prefer working for women leaders personally. But another thing that shocked me is when I dug into the research, you see a lot of CMOs who oftentimes are female, not every case, but they skew female. And there's a lot of posts on LinkedIn about female empowerment, women's networking groups, women award shows. And then if you actually drill down, only 1% of female-owned agencies are retained by the Fortune 500. Why is there such a influence or there's such a messaging around female ownership and female entrepreneurship, but when it comes down to like actually putting your money where your mouth is, we see very little progress. Any comments from your end?
I feel like this can turn into a talk show at night if I had enough time.
Let's go.
So first and foremost, shout out to all the women founders, owners, and entrepreneurs. It's Women's History Month.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we pick a spotlight on that. But the reason why there are platforms that amplify women entrepreneurs and founders and CMOs is because there has not been support, to your point, because of the lack of support. And we have to pull each other up. If we have the platform, if we have the influence, we have to make sure that we're using that space to highlight other women, because if we don't support each other, then the industry will not support us. And it has definitely been an uphill battle. I think that because this industry started off, I mean, look at Mad Men, right? That series was about men in advertising, and it wasn't really primarily focused on women. However, we have been making inroads, great inroads, and award-winning, solutions and campaigns and creative that needs to be recognized and also needs to be backed up by brands who say, oh yeah, we want to support women. To your point, put your money where your mouth is then, right? And so most recently, because I saw that there are, circumstances where individuals are being overlooked in this industry, we at Digital Culture Group create the Forward 30. And it's shining a spotlight on individuals who are pushing the industry forward based on impact, innovation, and culture. And it's the first of its kind because typically, to your point, there are awards for different demographics, and that's necessary because without those, people wouldn't be recognized. But then there's also awards based on case studies and ROI growth for businesses and creative, but nothing really about the people behind the work that have really encompassed this just, I would say fortitude, and also really just making sure that their work is being pushed with, again, these uphill battles, getting approvals, getting new partners on the plan without recognition sometimes. And they've been doing this for years, sometimes 30 to 40 years in this industry without being recognized. And I said, this is important. These partners work with us. These partners have elevated us. And I need to make sure that I am, because of my platform, putting that spotlight on them as well. But the beautiful thing about this is that they have to also recognize the next, individuals and the next Forward 30 for years to come. So this person that is an honoree today, for next year, they have to nominate the next person, and then it continues to go. Yeah, so
it almost becomes like a class of like a cohort, and then but they're helping you find the next cohort year to year.
Exactly.
I love that. That's really cool. All right. You've said the speed of culture is outpaced ad tech. What does that mean?
Ooh, that means that we are looking at demographics like adults 18 to 34. And those are old school demographics, right? Because we cannot say that adults 18 to 34 or adults 34 to 54, 35 to 54 are all the same. We know that it's not. And the crazy part is that, marketers are hungry for the new audiences. Unfortunately, the ad tech infrastructure was not built to help them find those new audiences. So marketers are assuming Gen Z is my next audience. They're just saying, okay, the next generation is my new audience I need to focus on. But in actuality, it might not be that new audience, that next generational audience. So for the first time in the advertising industry, when we created RA, we said we have to use AI to identify that next audience, to keep up with the speed of culture using live data signals and market signals to tell us it might not be Gen Z, it might be eco-conscious hair enthusiasts. It might be, it might be these really nuanced audiences that are not mainstream yet, but they will be, and we need to invest or test them out before we have to conquest those audiences from our competitors.
Yeah, I love that. And when you're a challenger brand, for instance, and you don't have the budget to just put a drop of water in the ocean against a demographic like adults 18 to 34, that coveted key demo, as they say. But if you have an ad that goes, heavies up on a particular microcosm of demographics where you really know a lot about them, you know, the overlapping affinities. Like I like to talk about kind of this idea of like the mashup brand, or the, you know, the brand that takes like two affinities, slams them together, and then becomes hyper affinity for the people in the middle. Maybe a brand that is relevant to me, for instance, would be like Travis Matthew. Travis Matthew is a golf brand that was designed by guys from Quicksilver in the skateboard and surf industry. So if you're a golfer and a surfer in Southern California, like Travis Matthew is your jam, right? And there are so many examples of brands, like you said, that care about things like, you know, ethically sourced ingredients, but they're also made for a certain type of hairstyle or a certain type of skin or a certain complexion. And then you've got, you know, maybe they use real models instead of, you know, models from the runway or from a modeling agency. And as you like add on these different layers of value, like when people see those ads and you're just targeting the people that have those identifiers, it goes viral within those communities. And then it becomes, you know, then it kind of naturally spreads out to the second and the third circles.
100%, like Patagonia, Carhartt, like these are right micro segments that now everyone knows about because of that. And I think that's really important, especially when we're looking at brands who have used the same audience year after year after year. But right now, more than ever, I think that brands need to understand that because of social, economic, political circumstances that we're in right now, the audience that you had last year may not be the audience that you have this year or even last month, right? And we see that with retailers, especially with particular retailers saying we're going to roll back DEI. The audience that they had before they said that was not the audience that they had 2 months prior or later, right? So we need to make sure that we're really staying attuned to what people are saying, the shifts in the market. And that's why it's so important to look at market signals and live data signals and sentiment of the audience to understand how you're going to message them. How are you going to use targeting to reach them?
Love it. You baked philanthropy into the business model from the beginning, whether that's scholarships for HBCU students. How does giving back tie into your approach to advertising, and what impact have you seen from prioritizing culture within your own organization?
It stems back really, I think, my family's legacy. So I am the great niece to Sergeant Alfred B. Hilton, who was the Medal of Honor recipient for the American Civil War.
Wow.
And it's really to know that I come from a legacy of that. Everything we do, from my family standpoint, any type of business that we start, we have to have a give back component that is like mandated, right? Always care. Yeah, always care about our people, and our people meaning the American people, all people, right? The society that we live in. And so with our philanthropic efforts, I said it's important, of course, that we're audience first, but we can't be audience first without understanding how these audiences need to survive in our country. And how do they survive is us making sure that the nonprofit organizations that support individuals in this country are being supported. Sometimes they lack resources for advertising. And we know that advertising, it really drives scale and reach for people who want to donate, for people to have awareness of that nonprofit organization. So we have the IMPACT program that stands for Impressions for Positive Change and Transformation. And we have worked for nonprofit organizations to drive advertising for them as a bonus. So what we do is we gift added value, so free ad spots to our brands we work with as a thank you for their partnership. And then we tell them, you know, you don't have to, but if you would like to, pay it forward as like a small percentage of those added value impressions to give to nonprofit organizations that help with individuals that are impacted in different communities. We would love that. And a lot of our brands say yes. So we give those nonprofit organizations impressions, free ad space. And with that, we've been able to really have such, and I'm getting emotional when I think of this, such a huge impact in those nonprofit organizations and the communities they serve. For example, a streaming service, and this was for Toys for Tots during the holiday season. we were able to advertise, so give back, impressions to those nonprofit organizations for Toys for Tots that they work with as well. And Toys for Tots, for the first time in history, with a combination of our ads and other, organizations that were helping them, we're able to give 12 million children gifts for the holiday season.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool. I love to hear stories about how people in the advertising industry are figuring out ways to give back through all of the exciting opportunities that we have, as both technologists, but people who are working on behalf of the budgets of these massive companies. I was on an interview yesterday and was talking about a company called Givesly that allows, sales reps. Yeah, they let sales reps basically, donate time or money in order to get attention span from, potential people at agencies. So kind of like, oh, I can help, instead of just getting a coffee, I can get a donation for an organization that I care about. And Jeff Green from the Trade Desk has pledged to give away 90% of his wealth. And he has an organization called Data Philanthropy that is taking ad tech models to figure out how they can have bigger impacts on nonprofits. So yeah, such a cool thing when people are doing that. And I see, there's probably a lot of synergy with the stuff that you're doing in some of those other groups. So maybe we should talk about that offline. But
we actually, Dylan, real quick, we were Givesly's values-based vendor when they first started the awards. Yeah, for that. So we're the winner of that.
Amazing. Congratulations. Yeah, I was a Power user when they first came out, when it was like individual reps one-on-one, especially in COVID when it was hard to get meetings. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then they changed their business model, and I've lost touch. I need to reconnect with those guys. So, all right. So you've appeared on podcasts. You've spoken at events like CES AI House. We've talked a little bit about AI today. I think that this is kind of the year of trying to get as specific as possible around AI. Last year was a lot around like hype. Everybody's doing AI, like we're all doing the AI thing. And then now I love to talk to ad tech folks about how is AI actually bringing value to the organization, and how is it increasing human beings' ability to be more effective versus replacing them. What do you see as the most major impact that AI has had on your business model as an operator?
AI has been transformational, to be honest with you, super transformational in the sense of really allowing us to understand the audience better that we need to reach based on the briefs that we get from different marketers. It's also been educational for a lot of our marketers who don't have a diverse background, who are trying to reach nuanced audiences, diverse audiences for different cultural moments or tentpole events or just for a product launch. And they have no idea where to start. I have big brands reaching out and saying, Crystal, which language should we serve this particular audience? Because they don't know. And so our AI platform was able to let them know the preferred advertising language split for particular audiences that have a heritage language. And so when people think about AI, they assume that there's no human element, but there is, I think, more of a human processing element than advertising has ever had in determining which audience they should reach. But the issue is that garbage in, garbage out. If you do not have someone who understands culture and nuanced audiences and diverse audiences, and that can give that POV to help engineer and framework your AI, then you're not going to be able to connect with audiences. You're not going to give it that human touch. And that's the issue that the industry is running into, because the engineers behind it and the people who are putting in the framework do not fully understand the culture or the resonance value or the audiences today. And that's why we're still working with demographics like 18 to 34 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right. For marketers, agency professionals, aspiring founders listening, what's your biggest piece of advice on building authentic, inclusive brands in business, in like ad tech and marketing, what you're doing today, or whether it's trying to build their own brands that are consumer led? What's your biggest piece of advice?
My biggest piece of advice is that the growth engine for your brand or for the brands and accounts that you work on is going to be diverse perspectives. If you not have people at the table who come from different backgrounds, who are different genders, who are different generational age groups, who are different demographics, you're not going to be able to grow your business. Because you need that different perspective to understand what is Gen Z saying, what's new, what's cool in the culture and what they're doing. You need a gamer on your team to tell you the latest and greatest of, the competitive esports world, or maybe, casual mobile gaming. You need more voices in the room that don't look like you, because having a monolithic type of approach has never equated to business growth.
I love that. Yeah, I think more than ever, having people who represent all different types. I love the idea of like generational. I feel like there's sometimes people who are getting older and they feel ageism and some of these things, like they're like, oh, I'm not as relevant anymore. But I think the best collaboration comes from when people of all different demographics, age groups, backgrounds, interests. You're right. It's like people who have an interest around like fan culture and comic books might be very different from people who understand, board sports like surfing and snowboarding and stuff like that. And the best campaigns come from, I think, when people can give insight from areas that they're not familiar with, and bring that human insight to bear, that maybe gets people to ask questions of, oh, well, why didn't I think about it that way? So I love that. Well, Crystal, I've loved spending some time with you this morning. I love what you're building. I'm excited to follow along and keep up with your thinking and your progress. If people are enjoying the conversation that we're having today, they want to reach out and learn more about some of these strategies and some of these things that they can do for their own brand, where should people go to connect with you directly or learn more about your company?
Yeah, send us an email at hello@digitalculture.group, or you can connect with us on LinkedIn, Digital Culture Group, or Crystal Foote, Foote.
Let's go. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. And for everybody else at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. If you're listening to the show, don't forget to give us an honest review on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening on. It's how we find a larger audience organically. And last but not least, if you know a marketer out there who you think could get better at talking to some of these segments and these different audiences, getting more specific about the people that they're targeting, an entrepreneur maybe who could learn from Crystal's story, or just somebody who you think would enjoy the show, don't forget to share. I will be at Expo West and Ramp Up in San Francisco this week. If you are in the area, don't forget to reach out and meal, coffee, or interview on me. All right.